Kuye said he barely had memories of his papa, but never was a bit far-fetched. He had one memory of him. Papa came home one late night, frantic and scared. His eyes were reddish and he was sweating. One of his eyes was swollen and his lips looked like he had been punched multiple times. His dark, slender frame moved around the house, swifter than their eyes could follow. His bald head was drenched in sweat. His clothes were torn up and covered in stains of blood. They could not tell if it was his or someone else's. He moved around the house, searching through spaces and throwing things around. He turned the sofas upside down and scattered the clothes in their one-bedroom apartment. The 4 children who slept on the living room floor were scared and worried. His mama was also scared and worried. She hesitated and stood near the children while Papa searched like there was no tomorrow.
Where this thing dey? Where e dey?
Biodun, wetin you dey find?
Mama finally summoned the courage to ask. Papa ignored her and started struggling to lift the heavy mattress in the small bedroom. He finally lifted it, but grunted when he did not find it. Mama shouted this time.
Biodun, wetin you dey find? You never reach house for 2 weeks. Now you don come. Why you dey scatter everything? Wetin you dey...
You hide am?
Papa finally turned to Mama and yelled.
You hide am?
He grabbed her shoulders and started to shake her frantically.
Tell me now, unless I go...
Biodun, I no sabi wetin you dey find.
Mama said with tears in her eyes.
I no sabi.
He stared at her for a while as if to convince himself she was telling the truth and shoved her to the side. He turned to the children and yelled.
Una carry my money?
All 4 children quivered in the corner of the living room and shook their heads no. 11-year-old Taiwo and Kehinde shivered but stood boldly in front of their siblings to protect them. Abike, their sister, who was 8 years old, held the small 7-year-old Kuye, who was shaking with fear and urinated on his trousers. The sight of their father raging like a bull had made them so scared they couldn't open their mouths. Finally, he opened a drawer under the television and pulled out a large parcel overflowing with money. He had found what he was looking for. He wrapped it in the nylon and quickly dashed towards the house door. Before he left, he turned back and said,
If they come look for me, tell them say I no dey.
Then he dashed out the door. The scattered room went silent. Kuye's mother quietly got up and sat at the door. She sat at the door and stared into the distance. In the direction where her husband had run, it was Abike who changed little Kuye's soiled shorts. The children cleared the things that had been scattered by their raging father and laid back down on the living room mats, but their mother had teared off into the night. When they looked closer, they noticed that she had been silently crying. She did this until she fell asleep, sitting at the door. That was the last memory Kuye and the sibling had of their father. The next morning, a group of street thugs came, knocking on their door looking for their dad. They knocked rapidly and haphazardly. Once Mama opened the door, they asked,
Where Biodun dey?
Their mother could have reported. She could have pointed them in the direction he ran or told them what he had carried as he ran. But instead, she replied,
I don't know.
The little children knew better than to speak. Now, Kuye stood at the door of his sister's small face me I face you apartment, knocking rapidly on her door, a bag of money held tightly to his chest. He knocked rapidly, hoping she would hear, but tried not to be too loud so he wouldn't wake the neighbors. He was tired and covered in sweat. He had not slept well in weeks. The week of the robbery operation with the congregation, Kuye had run to the next town that same night to look for Edeth's cousin. He did his best to track the house down by asking strangers if they knew who Umfom was around the area. The strangers were scared to answer him as he looked rough and tattered. Eventually, they had directed him to the closest house. But when he got there, he was told that the only Umfom there had traveled days ago and would not be back anytime soon. Kuye had slept on the street for 3 weeks and hid in corners. He did not sleep well because he knew members of the congregations would be looking for him. He returned to Umfon's house once a week to check if he had returned. But when he realized that Umfon would not be returning anytime soon, he left and returned to his own town. Knocking rapidly on the door, Kuye said,
Sister, sister, it's me.
He finally had the latch of the door open slightly and saw a small head peep through the opening. It was one of her children. The child closed the door and went inside.
Mommy, Daddy, it's Uncle.
And soon after, his sister opened the door once more. She quickly pulled him into the house and locked the door. Abike and her mechanic husband stood in their small self-contained home and stared at Kuye. His sister was about to say something when her husband halted him in a low tone.
Wetin you dey find for here? You no know say dem dey find you? Dem come my shop scatter my things to check whether I dey hide you.
Kuye stared at him in the eye, but did not answer him. Instead, he looked at his sister.
Sister, abeg, I wan dey here. I know say dem dey find me, but I wan run. I no wan do am rubber again.
Abike's 4 children gathered at her back.
Oye, them don dey find you since. How could you steal from father? You no know say you no dey take him money play. Now they don say the person wey find you, dem go give am 1 million naira. I no wan make you die, but how you go do that kind thing?
Kuye sighed.
Sister,
He turned to her husband too.
uncle,
There were tears in his eyes as he remembered his dear friend, turned brother, who had died in the bush 3 weeks ago. His brother he promised to bury, but couldn't.
I no wan do am rubber again. No be good work. I know say I suppose don stop since, but now I no wan do am again. Help me. They don kill Edet. I no wan die too.
Tears rolled down his cheeks.
Where the money wey you steal?
His sister asked.
See am. I wan use am start better life.
His brother-in-law sighed and looked at him.
Wetin you wan do now?
Kuye told them about his plan to run to Calabar and start a new life. He would start a new life and look for Edet's family to report his death to them. He owed him that much. His brother-in-law agreed to help him. He would go to the shop at midnight and get a car. He would drive him to a car park where he would get a bus to Calabar. Kuye was grateful and the man left to get the car. He laid on his small couch in his sister's house and rested his eyes. He fell asleep and dreamed of him and Edet running a big company somewhere in Calabar, that they were still together and running their business. He was being tapped to wake up, and immediately he opened his eyes. Heavy blows rained down on him. At first, he was confused. Then he realized his brother-in-law had betrayed him to get the prize money for himself. His sister screamed and pleaded in the background while they continued to beat him up. When they had finally stopped, they dragged him out of the house. The neighbor began to gather and gasp. Kuye's eyes were swollen and his vision was blurry. But he managed to look up and saw himself at the feet of Father. The small man bent to the ground where Kuye was.
You think you fit carry my money run? You dey mad.
Kuye cried. He shed tears and crawled into a ball on the ground. There was blood running down a cut in his head that stung. He knew the streets were dangerous and all his life he had survived on them. No matter the words his mother told him, he had run from them. But now here he was, laying in the street he once conquered, almost bleeding to death.
I no believe say you go fit do this kind thing.
Before Kuye could say anything, Father pulled out a gun and shot him in the head. The last thing he heard was a voice of his mother ghost who had come to carry him. We are aware of the eagle's movement outside. That's why we asked the chicken not to go out to the dump yard because it will be killed. Then life went blank.
Thank you for watching.
Kindly click the subscribe button for more videos like this.